Check is proudly brought to you by First Capital Bank. Belief comes first.
Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the House of Zoo. Now we're going to be jumping into our favorite Sunday segment, the Health Check with Dr. B. And today we are talking wearable technology. Morning, Dr. B.
Morning. Are you wearing anything technological?
I don't do that. I don't like it to mess with what's happening with me.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, it's an important subject because I think I always go by the adage as a scientist that if you don't measure, you can't manage. And so we've been doing it in the past through very old-fashioned technology where you go to the lab and they draw some blood and then they get a blood test result. They go to the machines and the machine spits out a result. It's then emailed to you. And then the doctor then calls you, and this is a very long process. And I think if you were around during the time of those clip-on pedometers where you knew how many you walked, you know that wearable health and fitness devices have come a long way. And I guess the question you need to ask yourself is how can wearable technology be applied, effectively to healthcare and how is the research making technology more accessible? I think what's happened, Zoo, is especially during the lockdown, people couldn't access clinics and hospitals and facilities or doctors and had to somehow get to grips with measuring things on their own in terms of determining whether their sugar was high, their blood pressure was high, whether they were feeling unwell, temperature. If you remember, people were wearing oxygen monitors to see whether the oxygen was dropping. So this really has spurred on over the last 2.5, 3 years, a huge development in wearable health technologies. And I see certainly in the last 5 years, there's been a massive increase in digital wellness wearables. And people often send me data from their phones and from their watches and all those Fitbits that they carry. And I think these are, for those who don't know what it is, these are small electronic devices that you can place on your body and can help measure all sorts of things today. And I think in 2022, we've got devices on the market in Botswana which can help measure temperature, blood oxygen levels, breathing rate, or about GPS location. It can measure, for patients of ours who've had stroke, physical movement, changes in direction, instability of the body in terms of the stroke. And more recently in my field, you can actually print out an ECG, which is called an electrocardiogram. It's an Apple technology which you put on your wrist and it actually draws an ECG of how your heart is pumping. And those who have irregular heartbeats or palpitations can actually record it and send it off to their doctors. So these are really important things that have come about, and increasingly our population is actually delving into them. And the main issue that I have with this is if you measure, you've got to be able to know how to manage. I mean, there's no point in saying, I've only done 4,000 steps when the doctor says you need to do 8,000. And no point measuring your blood pressure if it goes up and you're not doing anything about it. There's no point actually now put little skin, almost little the size of an elastoplast bandage on your skin, and you can actually measure your sugar in real time. They're called CGMs, continuous glucose monitors, and they've been a major breakthrough in terms of diabetics. In terms of, for example, some diabetics don't do well by eating oats or bran or cornflakes. Others are fine. So we've begun to realize that not all diabetics are the same. Some people with blood pressure have fluctuations at night because they have night terrors or they're not sleeping well or their partner is snoring. And so we actually beginning to discover almost, if you like, precision medicine, where we're actually tailoring a blood pressure pill based on the fluctuation in the blood pressure, diabetic pill based on what you eat, when you eat. You may be a truck driver, you may be a bus driver, you may be a night nurse. So things fluctuate, and so we've begun to actually personalize and make more precise measurements of patients who have chronic disease. So in our area, certainly chronic disease, diabetes, blood pressure, stroke, cholesterol, we've been able to actually use this technology in a really great way to empower patients in terms of how they manage their health. So for me, it's an added plus in terms of convenience, in terms of getting a patient to say, if you're not feeling well, send me the data on the phone. And they can actually send all that data to us, either on a computer or onto my phone, and say, this is what I'm having, Naka. Well, what do I do about it? And if it's not something urgent, we can actually reduce the overload in an ER operating room, we can say, just take an extra pill of X, Y, and Z, or you need to come to the hospital immediately because something is not right.
Well, I mean, if you put it like that, Dr. B, then yes. I was thinking you were talking about those iWatches that you just answer and you text with. But if you're talking about Fitbits and those, because my mom actually has one that she goes running with, and it gives her all her vital, all the things that are happening with her vitally inside. So that's what I'm saying. I thought you were talking about like the fancy ones, but now that we are talking about ones that actually can help you, yes, you're helping me also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It helps children. I mean, most people out there in Moraka or Massimo, if you have a grandson, you just get them to wear this strap, and you can actually then electronically send the data to somebody in Gabs. So that's one of the. I mean, the downside obviously is the cost.
Yes.
And then secondly, of course, it needs to be charged. So an elderly person may not be able to know how to charge this thing, when to charge it. So there are some actually interesting things that are coming out in the horizon. So I mean, there's something called. I've just been speaking to a company that's actually doing what's called energy harvesting, where research is where the movement of your body is actually creating electrical currents, and you can convert that body vibrations into some sort of energy. So that's something that's very new. And within the next year or so, there's something called a smart contact lens devices, which is, I guess, nothing short of a sci-fi movie, where you put a smart contact lens that can deliver real-time information to the human eye.
Yeah.
The eye drops, the tears in your eye have all sorts of chemistry that we can actually measure: kidney function, sugar function, all sorts of things. Glaucoma, which means pressure in the eye. I mean, I know that Google and Samsung and Sony are working on developing these soft electronic smart contact lenses that can actually sync up with your smartphone. So this is something that's coming on very, very soon in terms of data. In addition, I know that Apple, speaking to some of my colleagues in the US, Apple is coming up with smart glasses that are designed to transfer information from the user's phone to their face. So you can actually tell you when your body temperature is going up, when your oxygen is going down, whether your blood pressure is fluctuating, whether your heart is beating irregularly, and it actually comes up and synchronizes with your phone. So these are devices that I think will become much more useful for us doctors in terms of managing people remotely, and in terms of the proven benefits. Certainly over the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a huge empowerment of people who do these things. I mean, overweight people taking 10,000 steps or more, fasting in terms of intermittent fasting, what it does to your sugar, all that sort of stuff. I think has empowered people to do things. And you'd rather go and send the data to your doctor rather than go to a hospital and sit in the queue for God knows how many hours.
Yeah, hours is exactly what I'm talking about. And I think the pros and cons vary, because I really like when you asked me when we started, I said to you, I don't like wearing things or having. I really don't. I've been healthy this whole time, but I won't lie. They've helped, like I said, my mom or her friends when it comes to jogging, walking, and all those things. And then the downsides, like you're saying, for somebody like me, I cannot necessarily afford something like that right now. So are there any other things, that affordable ones that people can find, or are they all just expensive? Because what about the young person that's out there that needs these things?
Well, I can tell you, Zoo, that many, just like the cell phone industry, when many years ago, getting a smartphone was really expensive.
Yeah.
The technology rate is speeding up so fast that a lot of companies, we call them Me Too companies, are just simply going to copy the technology and offer it at a cheaper rate, from Singapore, China, from India. So the technology is going to be very usable, very affordable, and something that you think about the time wasted taking your granny to a hospital, waiting in a queue. In terms of if you monetize that time, it is almost equivalent of whatever watch or thing you're wearing. So think about it from another perspective in terms of downtime for often young people accompanying elderly to the hospital, or getting somebody to prick mum or dad for the blood sugar or whatever it is. So these are issues that one needs to consider in terms of, and chronic diseases such as cancer, such as lung disease, such as heart failure and diabetes actually cost a lot of money, and for somebody to come late with heart failure or uncontrolled sugar in a hospital, in the public hospital, it costs between 4,000 to 6,000 pula per night to admit a patient patient into a bed at night just to admit the patient, never mind the doctor's time and nurse time. So there are a whole lot of things that we need to consider in terms of whether this thing is actually cost effective or not. So this is something definitely on the horizon. It's not on television. It's in our bedroom at the moment.
Yes.
It's going to come to us somehow or other. So be on the lookout for it. But it is really important to understand for those youngsters that do have this, that if you're measuring it, make sure you're actually managing what you measure. Don't just say, oh, I didn't sleep. I only slept 4 hours last night. So it's very important to measure all these things and think, what do I do about this stuff?
All right. Well, perfect, Dr. B. Do we have a clue of what we'll be talking about next week?
We do, and it's something that I know little about. So I'm in contact with some of my colleagues who had questions about hair loss.
Oh yes, I would love to. I would love to hear about that, Dr. B.
Why do women lose hair, and then why do men, of course, lose hair? So I'm in contact with some of my colleagues who are hair experts, and we'll talk about that next week.
Oh, lovely. All right, Dr. B. Well, it was good speaking to you today. Also giving me a little bit of a 411 on wearable technology. Hope you have a great Sunday.
Thanks, Sue.
Bye, Dr. B. And that's Dr. B and myself as we shut down the health check. We were talking wearable technology. Also, let me sign out. It's time for Sway to take over with Sunday Fun Day on Yarn FM. Live the music. It's your girl, Zuziwe Mavuma, and this is my way out. Bye.
Health Check was proudly brought to you by First Capital Bank. Belief comes first.